Hey, welcome back to Rock Stardust. My name's Robbie, and today we're going to have a look at the top 10 tough guys of rock, right? Now, I've done some videos on this already, on a few different artists, people, so you're more than welcome to check those out in my videos there. But look, hey, this is, an interesting topic. It goes back to the blues guys, like they deserve some mention, the likes of, the intimidating figure of someone like Howling Wolf, back then would have been pretty scary. And, Bo Diddley, no, he did a bit of boxing. I think Willie Dixon as well. And I know the King, obviously Elvis Presley, he had a bit of the martial arts going on. So you want to see that some of those movies. But this is going to be primarily rock today. So I'll kick it off. By the way, if you enjoy this kind of thing, please do hit the subscribe button, give it a like, and let me know your thoughts on who you think the toughest guys are from rock. Now, I'm going to get started. And at number 10, I've got Bon Scott, who, feisty, Scottish background, obviously raised in Australia, real street fighting mentality, and definitely could stick up for himself or anyone else. Wasn't the kind of guy to start fights, but definitely if things fired up, he was there and he wouldn't back down. So, notoriously it was a Deep Purple concert in Australia when the band early days, where they backstage there was a bit of a fallout with the roadies and he was involved, got someone in a headlock. But yeah, so he's at my number 10. Not a tall man, but a tough guy. At number 9, I've got Paul Rodgers from Free Bad Company, and obviously sang with Queen later on. Paul Rodgers, one of the great singers of all time, but also, was a second dan black belt in karate. And, again, he wouldn't shy away from any issues or problems. Was renowned for having a bit of a bad temper from time to time if things weren't going his way. And he became good friends with someone else you'll find out more about later, called Ronnie van Zandt back in the day. So again, there was a story I read about them, towards the end of the first phase of Bad Company, where him and Boz Burrell got into a bit of a fist fight, and stuff happened there and stuff like that. But yeah, no, again, not a tall man, but very well trained, and had a bit of a rep. Okay, at number 8, I've got the mighty Phil Lynott from Thin Lizzy. His dad was a boxing champ, who obviously left his life when he was very young. He's Jamaican. I think that's right. And he grew up being one of the very few black guys in Dublin, like extremely rare. And learned how to look after himself, would definitely stick up for himself, and was a real macho, tough guy, but also had that whole romantic side as well. It was just a genuine, man's man. There was some stuff with Eric Bell in the early days. They smashed up a hotel room. They got into a big scrap there. There was other incidents where he was renowned for just one punch. He didn't want to waste time with fools, so it was just a one punch, and that was his approach. And but you can hear the lyrics too. Going back to I'm your main man if you're looking for trouble. No one's tougher than me. I'll kick you in the head. You'll soon be seeing double. I'm a rocker. And the fighting, dun, 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 dun. So Classic stuff, Phil. All right. Next, I've got another Phil. This is Phil Mogg from UFO, and Phil was a North London boxing champion as a teenager. So he definitely had some skills and had a bit of a reputation as well. Like, people didn't really want to mess with him, and he brought that sort of onto the stage as well in his performance. So that's Phil Mogg from UFO. Okay, and at number 6, I've got Diamond Dave, David Lee Roth. He could be higher. I'm not sure how much he would be. Like, you got to look at also the fact that with these guys actually utilize this stuff. But from a teenager, he was studying karate, and he was right into it. So, and you saw the big kicks on stage with Van Halen. It wasn't all show. He was very dedicated in all the crafts he got into. You know, he's a fascinating listen. And he did spend a couple of years later in life learning. He did jiu-jitsu. He went to Japan for 2 years, studied there. So definitely genuinely into the arts. And did get his black belts and stuff like that. All right, so that's Diamond Dave. And at number, what are we up to now? Number 4, is it? God, I'm losing my mind here. Okay, number 5. All right, I've got, Maynard Keating from Tool. Now, again, not quite a short guy, but highly trained in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. So he has a big reputation for that, and studies it hard, like really dedicated to it. So you can imagine with the intensity of that music and his sort of character that you wouldn't really want to cross him either. So so I've got him there. Number 4, I've got Dave Mustaine from Megadeth, right? He, again, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, highly dedicated to it. He had that tough persona in the band, but genuinely highly skilled, got his black belts. He dedicated again to it, like really, really into it. Like someone that has a lot of a really good reputation in that sense, as someone who really knows what they're doing and can handle themselves really well. So that's who I've got at number 4. At number 3, let's see if we can get this one right. All right, I've got the Wild Scotsman Jimmy Barnes from Cold Chisel. All right, originally from Glasgow as a young boy, moved to Australia, grew up in a pretty rough area called Elizabeth in South Australia. And his dad was a Scottish boxing champion. He grew up really hard, like tough upbringing. Saw a lot of violence young, and that really grew into, when you read his books, and through his teenage years he was getting into all sorts of trouble, but really could fight. And like with the band days, it got pretty wild. When you're drinking 2 bottles of vodka a day and stuff like that, things can get a bit feisty, and especially with that Glaswegian temperament. Barnsley's a real deal. A real tough guy. He was renowned for doing things like jumping into the crowd and dealing with things, sorting people out. And no one wanted to mess with him, even though he's a great bloke and fantastic singer. But genuinely was a threat, as was his brother Swanee, who's probably even more so, from what I've read. So that's Jimmy Barnes, and he did a lot of boxing himself and martial arts training. All right. Now at number 2, I've got Ronnie Van Zandt. Now, Ronnie, again, looking at these people, look at these guys, they're legends, but people that genuinely were dangerous. So you don't have to look too far to see the stories about Ronnie. And he was more than happy to use his fists and deal with stuff and sort people out. He didn't suffer fools lightly, but he was very volatile. And again, you know, too much of this and just you know, that southern kind of tough guy mindset. He, you know, learned to box. His dad was a boxer. He learned to box at a young age. People were genuinely a bit scared of him, including his own bandmates a lot of the time. And there's stories too about, you know, he was a tough taskmaster, put it that way, right? And you know, there's all sorts of stories. I mean, there was some German guy that tried to steal his hat. Who came off second best with a champagne bottle, and lots of examples of him getting into fights and things, right? So that's number 2, Ronnie Van Zandt. And at number 1 had to be JJ Burnell, no one else. I've done a video on him. It's had a lot of views. Check it out in my vids. Got a lot of great stories there to say about him. But when you are when you're a Shodokan karate champion and you actually compete and are renowned for that, and you're a 6-dan black belt, and the stories and the reputation and being a bit of a unit, it's not surprising, right? So he's definitely my number 1. There's all sorts of stories, you know, and he, even up to recent years as an older guy, if there's trouble in the crowd, he just put the bass down and go and sort it out. Like if people, you know, take the piss or throw a bottle or something, he'll just go and deal with them. But so many tales, so many great stories about JJ, and just an awesome bass player and figure, really. And you know, from things like taping journalists back in the day to, you know, high up the top of the Eiffel Tower, gaffer tape and stuff like that, and beating up some rock critic and dealing with the crowds, dealing with all. I mean, he was the real deal. So no one you wanted to mess with was JJ Burnell, and even to this day he wouldn't. Right? So highly regarded in that world of Shodokan karate, and the real deal. So, like I said, there's a couple of other vids. I've got another one on Phil Lynott. I've got one on Bon Scott. They are in my videos as well. You can check those out. But yeah, let me know what your list is, what your thoughts are. I'm sure you've got some ideas and thoughts on who you think are the tough rock guys in history. Love to see that. Remember, again, if you enjoy this kind of stuff, please give it a like, hit the subscribe button. Really appreciate that. I will see you next time. Rock on. Thanks for watching Rockstars. Cheers.